when I go to garage sales, I look around first and I try to find whatever I can. If they have any video game stuff out, I say, hey, I saw you had this video game stuff here. I was wondering if you had anything else, maybe any older Nintendo or Sega stuff, something like that, to see if they have anything maybe in their garage or that they didn't think to bring out or something like that. And most of the time they say no, or oh, that's all we have kind of thing. But sometimes they will say, yes, we do have some stuff, let me go grab it, and then you have a pretty good chance of getting a good deal. So I always make sure to ask. And at this garage sale, it was a kind of a younger guy. Looked like he probably was into video games. And he had some other stuff out there that made me think he probably did have some stuff. He had a big cardboard cutout of like the Scooby-Doo Mystery Machine van. He had a big box of He-Man toys and just some other stuff like that. So I asked him and he gave me a look, kind of like a little smirk, and he like tilted his head up like that and he said, you probably wouldn't believe it, but I've got a big collection of Nintendo stuff right behind that wall. He's pointing to, you know, his house. And so, but he's like, but I'm not really looking to sell anything. And I was like, oh man, you know, what kind of stuff do you have? Just curious. And he's like, oh, I got all this Super Nintendo and original Nintendo games with their original boxes and everything. And I was just showing as much interest as I could, trying to convince him to sell me some stuff. And I told him, I was like, well, I collect, and that's exactly the kind of stuff that I look for, is stuff in the original box. That's the only thing I collect. And so I was like, do you maybe have even like a single game that you don't play you might be interested in selling? And I finally convinced him to go inside, and he came back out with an absolutely mint complete copy of Dragon Warrior. And he said, this is the only one that I really want to sell. And he also had the Super Mario Brothers napkins, which I showed in a clip at the beginning, and then in the strategy guides, you can't really see it from the spines, but there was a couple. I got 3 Nintendo Power magazines from him, and then like a little cheat guide thing, and a couple like Nintendo product manuals, some really cool stuff. But he pulled out all that stuff in this, and then I had also picked out like some Wolfenstein PC game that he had out there that was factory sealed, and he said, I'll give you everything for 20 bucks. And I was like, okay, cool. For a complete mint copy of Dragon Warrior, that is not a bad price, so I'll take that. And this is like really, really mint. This is probably one of the best conditioned boxes I own now, which is awesome. And so I paid for the stuff, and I was gonna leave, and I was like, you know, if it's not too much to ask, could I see your collection? Because I really wanted to see what he had. I was really curious, and I just wanted to check it out. And he's like, yeah, sure, come on in. So I went in. He didn't have a crazy amount of stuff like I was kind of expecting him to by the way he was talking about it, but he was a big He-Man collector. He had a huge shelf of He-Man toys all set up. He had a huge Alien poster on the wall that was probably 6 feet tall, 4 feet wide. It was really awesome. And then he had an older TV set up in the corner, and he had a plastic tub on the ground, and he had a original NES and a Super Nintendo in their boxes, and then he had a bunch of games in their boxes, kind of just like thrown in there, like not carefully. And he was going through them, kind of just showing me what he had quickly. He was like pulling up the boxes and kind of like dropping them back in, like not being careful with them. And he pulled up this game, and I internally freaked out. I didn't want to show him that I was freaking out, but he pulled this up, and he kind of just like tossed it aside, like he didn't care too much about it. And the guy knew what he had because he told me that he had a complete Donkey Kong Jr. Math, which he sold for like $4.50, which is a great price, but that's not the kind of price that someone asks if they don't know what they have. So he knew at least a little bit. And so I just asked him, I was like, well, how much do you want for that game? Because I really, really want that. And he's like, oh, well, I wasn't really planning on selling it, but I mean, that is a game that I don't really play. How much would you offer for it? And I said, I'll give you all the money in my wallet. And at that point, I didn't even know how much I had. I was thinking I had like a couple $100, which probably tells you it's an expensive game, but I didn't know how much I have. And he was like, well, how much do you have? And I pulled out my wallet, I looked inside, I had $71, which is a lot less than I thought. And when I was telling him that I had 71, I was expecting him to be like, oh, no, you can't have it for that. That's a crazy low ball offer. And he was like, you know, I was gonna ask for 100 just to be a dick, but you know what? You're a nice guy, and it seems like you really want it, so you can have it. And so in the end, I actually only paid $40 for it because there actually is no cartridge. And I was going to give him the 71 originally, and then we figured out that it's missing a couple minor pieces, and he's like, well, you can have it for 60. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I left, and I was driving home, and I was looking at it when I was sitting at a red light, and realized that I didn't have the cartridge. So I drove back to his house, thinking that maybe he forgot to put it in, or we just didn't see it, and we looked for it and couldn't find the cartridge. So he actually gave me back another $20, even though I told him the $60 that I paid for it is very, very fair, and I'm willing to pay that just for the box. But he was like, no, here, just take the 20 back. And I couldn't convince him to not give it to me, so for 40 bucks from a garage sale, I got almost a complete copy of Stack Up for the NES. Very long story. Thank you guys for sticking with me through it, but here's Stack Up. The box is not in perfect shape, but it's not really crushed or anything. It's got like some damage down here and everything, and a little rip right there, a few creases and stuff, but nothing too bad. So the hang tab is, comes out when you open it. So no cartridge, unfortunately, but it's got the manual in there. And the other thing that it's actually missing is the plastic insert, which is the biggest deal. And then it's missing the little hands for Rob the Robot. So it's got all of these little pieces, the 5 little things here, and then it's got the 5 little colored things here. I don't even know what these are. The blocks. It's got the 5 colored blocks, the 5 little scoop things for them. So it's missing the cartridge, the plastic insert, and the little removable hands for Rob the Robot. So a complete copy, according to video game price charts, is about $450. And when I bought it, the only one on eBay was like $800, which I think is way too much. But for $40, that was just an incredible deal, and there's no way that I would ever pay anywhere near what this is worth to get it, because it's not a fun game. It's not the kind of game I want to sit there and play, but I'm very glad to have it in my collection. It's an awesome piece, and the story of getting it at a garage sale and getting it for $40 is just incredible. It was a very exciting day, to say the least.